Practice working one-on-one, and speaking of burnout, one-on-one is, I love it. I absolutely love my job. Thank God, because in this world that we're in right now, if you don't like your job, you're really having a tough time. And so maybe that'll come out tonight for anybody who is like me. I need some help with that. But I work, so I'm divorced, and I've got my kids. I've got two boys. They're 15 and 17. And how I had my practice set up is when I'm working. When I don't have the kids, that's when I'm working, and when I do have the kids, that's when I'm time off. But then when COVID happened, everything moved home. And so it's almost like I can work anytime, day, night, weekends, and so I really had to try to set some boundaries with that. So we'll talk a little bit about boundary setting in helping to overcome burnout. And but then I started my online, or my Facebook group. It's called the Women's Empowerment Toolkit, and it's basically after I got divorced and just kind of going over, I'm a couples counselor, so it's like, yeah, I'm a couples counselor, but I got divorced, so how can I help you? Which, it just kind of made me stop and go, what's going on? So I had to really take a look at myself and figure out, mistakes that I've made in the past, reevaluating life, and how kind of my online course and book came together, and the Women's Empowerment Toolkit group is just empowering women and figuring out, what do you want? What makes you tick? What, how are you taking care of yourself? Where's your confidence? Can you assert yourself? Which is really kind of all of what we're talking about in burnout. So we'll kind of get into all that too. So have you guys really thought about what burnout is and what it feels like to you? Are you able to spot it? Do you have kind of a definition for yourself? I just kind of wanted to hear from you guys about what your thoughts were about burnout first. I think that, what you guys are all talking about also is that you don't really know it until it really hits you. And I think that that's one of the biggest things with burnout, is especially as women. And I think that we're kind of in this, like, I don't know, Wonder Woman power, like, I got this, I don't need any help. Yep, you need help, I got you, what do you need? And so often, I mean, we've heard it a million times, you get to the bottom of the totem pole, you yourself in your own totem pole. And I think that what you guys have all kind of related with is that you don't know it until it's too late. And burnout can, we talk about what burnout is and what, oh, I'm so burned out, but it's really kind of a dangerous thing. And it starts to affect your body, and on so many different levels. Cindy, what you were saying, your body, mind, soul, spirit, I mean, everything. And you start to kind of feel it when you get tired, and then maybe you get kind of irritable, and then maybe you start making some bad decisions. And but I don't know, I almost feel like it's a double-edged sword, because the more you feel like you're slipping, the more it feels like you take on. And so it's almost like you're overcompensating for feeling so incompetent. But it doesn't work. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it's society or culture or something, but I think that it's really, really hard to, one, recognize it when it's still manageable, but also to ask for help. And which is another thing that we're not great at as women. But to ask for help by talking to, like, if you're in a job, so Heather, maybe this was you in this job where they just kept adding on more tasks, and you don't really want to say, like, hey, I'm slowing down, I'm making mistakes, because then you look like, maybe you don't know what you're doing, or you're not fit for the job, or you're not able to do it. So then I think a lot of times you keep it to yourself, and it does keep piling on, because I don't know, sometimes I look at it like people only know what they know. And so if you're in a job where a boss keeps piling things onto your plate, and if you don't say anything, they think, oh, well, I guess she's doing okay. So then maybe they put another thing onto your plate. And I think there's so many times, I mean, I don't know, prior to being in private practice, I worked for a company, and I would just be up in the middle of the night working, trying to get these authorizations out of my inbox. And, I think that sent a message to my boss at the time that we were fine. We didn't need to hire any help. But what I was doing is I was working against myself. And so I think that can happen also. So I think that, there's sort of backing up a little bit. I think there's two kinds of burnout. I think there's burnout where you're getting burned out because you're burning yourself out. And another kind that we'll talk about is burning out, like other people burning you out. I don't know if anybody can relate with that, but I can definitely relate with that. And I think that, so your own burnout, I was thinking of just being overwhelmed in yourself and just that constant grind. But I think that there's also when other people, like maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a boss, maybe it's your neighbor. But I don't know, can you guys relate with the two, like your own burnout, but then also other people just like constantly burning you out? Does kind of come back to, and we'll talk about that, like how to help and the remedies and stuff. But man, you're right, like just having those boundaries and being able to say, I cannot do one more thing. I think also with other people, if you've ever felt like this, but if you're working harder for somebody else's stuff, harder than they're working for their own stuff, that's a quick way to burn out. So like if someone is coming to you, I don't know, I use a work example, and they're just like, I can't do this and I can't do that, and this isn't working. And and you're like constantly trying to, maybe it's not your role, but you're trying to train them and you're walking them through things and you're correcting things for them, but they're not working to learn it themselves, but you keep fixing it for them. That's a quick way to burn out also. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about it like that, or you can relate with that, but I mean, tons of examples. If someone just constantly is complaining, I kind of look at it and they're not able to, if they're not able to help themselves, then obviously that's way different. But when you've got a very capable person, but they just don't want to help themselves and you keep trying to help them, that's the other kind of burnout that I was thinking of too. Do you guys have anything to add or any questions or anything? Okay. So I think, so I wanted to go over to the two kinds, and being able to recognize it in yourself, but also being able to recognize it when other people are. And Meaghan, when you were using your example, I think that earlier when I was saying like what happens and how when you experience that burnout, that's when you can get real irritable with people, because they're constantly like, oh, just one more thing. And then you just like unload on them and they're thinking, what just now happened? I only asked you to do a small thing, but it's not a single incident. It's where it just starts piling up. So I think that reaction that you have can be a quick way to understand like, yep, it's happening. Mm-hmm. So I was going to go into some ways that what it feels like. I think you guys had talked a little bit about that. Cindy, you had talked about just being that deep feeler, and then just the motivation part. You had talked about, just lack of motivation or some feelings. I think that those are spot on. I think the obvious ones can be like, oh, I get really depressed or I get really angry. But I think that there's also where you can become very self-critical. And then when you're not feeling good in yourself, you're much more likely to be judgy and critical of other people. So when you start feeling compromised, it's definitely going to come out. I don't know if you guys have ever done the experiment where, I don't know, you've probably like gone to the grocery store and, your hair's messed and you don't have any makeup on and your sweats. And of course that's when you're going to run into everybody that But I don't know, you just like, you don't want to have eye contact with people. Maybe you're in a really bad mood, or you, I don't know, you're sick or you didn't sleep, and you're just like, I mean, I can speak for myself. I will pick apart every single person who walks across my path. And I have to have a little chit chat with myself, like, hot Tammy, what are you doing? Just calm down. But when you go to the store and you feel good and you're in a good mood, and it's almost like you put this different energy out there, and you're not critical of other people. Your people are actually like holding the door open for you, or saying excuse me in the aisles or something. I mean, you put that out there. So think about when you're feeling burned out and everything is just piling on top of you, what's that energy that you're putting out there to other people? Because they're definitely picking up on it. So I think that the critical part, sometimes, have you guys ever felt when you're starting to get burned out? You talked about the lack of motivation and just being exhausted and tired, but sometimes it can also come out as like almost manic, almost that like high energy. And it could be where you're like running around and you're not really getting anything done, but you look real busy. Have you ever felt like that before?
Yes. Yeah, like lack of focus or intentionality.
Yeah.
And maybe that goes to what Cindy was saying about like the clarity, because you're all over the place. And if you're like a doer, then you just keep doing stuff, but it has no it's not strategic.
Right.
Or effective. It's just like, I'm just gonna keep doing things.
Hot mess time. I think that, yeah, and it almost feels, I call it the indecision dance. So it's like you go this way and you go, oh no, I'm gonna do this instead, and then you go that way, and it's like nope, and and you're just not getting anything done. And I think that it's because, like we were saying, when you get burned out, it starts affecting every part of your body. You're probably not sleeping. I mean, I think sleep is a basic need. So if you're not sleeping, then your filter and your ability to manage other things is like it's squished. Yeah. So if you're not sleeping because you're constantly thinking about all the things that you need to do or the things that you're not doing, your ability to handle things in the day, your focus, your clarity, your memory. I mean, a lot of times people come to me and they're just like really freaking out because they can't remember things, and it's very scary. It's a real fear of not being able to remember just small tasks, or who I was supposed to call, or even a memory, like past memory. But then we start looking at stress and stress management. I mean, stress will kill you, So I think that part of that is being, with burnout. I mean, it's hard for you to focus on anything. And then I guess, you can kind of think of it as a circle. So you're not getting anything done. You're freaking out. You're getting a lot of stress. You're not sleeping. You're feeling burned out, and then it just kind of repeats itself. So you feel like you're in this hamster wheel and you're just spinning and spinning, but you're not getting anything accomplished. I think that could definitely be a way of what burnout feels like. So it could go to either range, being almost on the manic side, or on the completely just fatigue and cannot get out of bed. Extreme fatigue is one that is very common. I think the manic part, people don't really talk about it or think about it too much. I think it kind of depends on your personality. Also, I think, Meaghan, like you were saying, if you're a doer and you're just, maybe it's tolerance wise, I guess is how I'm thinking of it. So like if you're a doer, you probably have a higher tolerance to manage like one more task and one more task, one more task. Maybe somebody that is like, I don't know, what would you say? Like go with the flow, or, I'm kind of good where I am. Like not super high achieving, but not like a lazy, but just somewhere in between. Like you like to have things done, but your tolerance might be smaller. So the feelings of burnout is going to hit you a lot faster, but you might not recognize it either. So I think that some of the way that how it lands on you depends on your personality type. And then so physical responses might be like teeth grinding, or I don't know, have you guys ever woken up in the middle of the night and it's like your fists are balled up? Does anyone do that? Just like, and that's kind of a sign of like,
no.
that sounds a little bit. Cindy, you're nodding your head. Have you ever felt that before?
Yes, I have. And my face is red because, oh my goodness, I've experienced it many times. But that's because I'm also very in tune. So when it hits me, it's like, oh my goodness, it's more intense.
Yeah.
And Heather, have you ever felt that before?
Surprisingly, no, but I'm surprised I haven't. But
It's
no,
crying over
I'll
nothing.
wake up. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'll wake up and just not fall back to sleep, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is just crying over with no reason why a sign of burnout, or I can't tell if it's that or the pregnancy hormones, but just I'm upset. I'm just upset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, because I mean, crying is almost, I mean, it's a way of getting, I look at it like it gets those toxins out of your body. Mm-hmm. And there's a buildup of emotion. And so it's a way of just going, blah, even, and you feel exhausted, especially after one of those ugly cries, where you're just, afterwards, you're just like, just exhausted, because it's a way of getting that out. But sure, I mean, yeah, if you think about any emotion that just doesn't make sense, I guess you could pick anything like laughing inappropriately, maybe, or absolutely crying, or, we've talked about anger, just impulsive behavior choices. Yeah, you're just not yourself. You're not on your game. Mm-hmm.
Tammy, can I interrupt to ask a question?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, in your experience, do you see this occurring more in helping professions or people or like business owners, or like, is there a certain type of person that's more prone to experience this? Because I do a lot of like values work too in my business and with my clients, like determining what's most important to them and building their business around that. And I'm curious if it's like, if, for example, like if a trigger is something that you care about, like if a value of yours is building wealth and the business is not bringing in income, your burnout is associated to the failings of that or something like that. Or like, I find that I often feel more burnt out as a foster parent. I'm a foster parent than I do like in my business and my work. And I wonder if it has to do with, you mentioned like when you're working with people who can't help themselves, like children, or like because I care more about it, or maybe potentially.
I think that's a good question. I was trying to think of where I see it the most, and I almost want to say it, instead of it being more based on the occupation, I think it's more internal, maybe personality type, maybe how hard you are on yourself, what your individual expectations are of yourself, how self-critical you are, which I guess the opposite, which what we'll talk about with remedies is also giving yourself credit for things and cutting yourself some slack when you need to, asking for help, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think to your point of like people who are maybe more empathic or working with other people, caregivers, I mean, yeah, you're constantly giving, but maybe it's not any different if you're like a financial person and you're working more with numbers. Maybe it's not any different because you're still tying yourself to your client's success. And when you're working with something like economy and when things are in the tank and you're just maybe scrounging for how can I help? How can I help? But you're working with something that you don't have any control over. I could see where that would really bring you down. Which, you know, that we could add another one of those to the burnout is like trying to control things that you have zero control over. And that, I mean, that's kind of the basis of anxiety is there's two things that make up anxiety. I'm kind of go on a tangent here, but one thing is not having a sense of control around your environment. And it's not that you have to be like this controlling person, but everybody needs a sense of control in their environment, whether you're an infant, and I see Caitlin has a little picture of a baby there. So yeah, whether you're an infant or whether you're 110 years old, you still want some kind of control over your environment. And when you don't have a sense of control, that'll cause anxiety. And another factor with anxiety is the cognitive part, going in the what ifs and the worst case scenario and just getting too far ahead of yourself, like futuristic thinking, fantasy thinking. Those two things make up anxiety. So I guess pulling it back to the burnout, if you're trying to control something that you can't, you're back in the hamster wheel. Yeah, and if you guys have questions, just jump in. I'm pretty laid back, so you're not interrupting anything I've got going on here. So definitely jump in if you have any questions. So let's see. Yeah, does anyone have any questions up to this point? Good. Okay. So the next part that I was going to talk about is why burnout happens, and we've touched on a lot of these. You know, going back to like self and others, burnout in yourself and then getting burned out with other people. I don't know, just based on what we've talked about or in your own lives, how do you why do you think burnout happens? Think about like you got into this profession, whatever profession, because you had a passion. You know, it's, I mean, I guess some people get into a job that they could care less about, but I don't think that's the case here. With you guys, but you're right, like you got into this because you had this passion and you were really excited about it, and then when things like either go wrong or other things get in the way that keep you from getting to just focus on your passion, and now all of a sudden you're wasting this time over here, then hi Kaylin, and if you're wasting time over there, then yeah, you're not getting to even do what it is that you really set out to do. So I think that you could definitely have burnout there. I think that there is something about our culture, and it probably in a few other cultures also, but it's just the grind, you know. And you've seen memes on it and people joke about it, and but like if you're not part of this grind, or if you're not quadrillion multitasking, you're at the end of the line, you know. I mean, and I think that it goes, you can fall at the end of the line. Let me rephrase that, because what happens is when you're grinding too much and you're multitasking all over the place, you're back to that thing that we originally were talking about, that you're not getting anything done. You're kind of doing a little here, a little there, a little there, but you're not completing anything. And what do you think that does to your confidence? When you're just constantly in this grind, not completing anything, your confidence is going to tank. And think of it as a teeter-totter. When your confidence goes down, your anxiety goes up. When your anxiety goes down, your confidence goes up. So I try to think about it like, you know, when you brushed your teeth this morning, you probably didn't have anxiety if you could put toothpaste on your toothbrush because you're a professional toothbrusher, because you've done it so many times. So you probably didn't have anxiety about it. But if somebody asked you to go speak in front of, 500 people about, I don't know, what astronauts do in outer space, that would give me a ton of anxiety because I have no idea. So my anxiety would go up and my confidence would go down. But if someone were to ask me to talk about anxiety or something like that, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. My confidence is high, my anxiety is low. So think about that. So when you're exhausted and you don't have a filter to manage stuff, when you're working too hard on things and not taking enough time for you, you can just feel that shift happen in your body. And that's gonna cause some burnout. It's a cultural expectation, but it's almost like a cultural necessity almost. I mean, if you're not doing that, then look at the algorithms, I mean, this on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. I mean, if you're not constantly posting, then your algorithm goes to the back and no one sees your stuff. So it's like it's reinforced in our culture also. So yeah, it absolutely has to do with then asking for help, hiring people on, working, what is that, work smarter, not harder. How does that fit into your own life? How can you work smarter, not harder? Yeah, but I think that definitely cultural expectations, but then our own expectations of ourselves, and that maybe we can move into the remedies part and some ideas to help with burnout. I would always, I don't know why I just thought of this, but I would always, when I'd get like, the self-help books or something, and I'd read it up to the part where it was like, okay, here's what you need to do. And then I'd be like, I shut it and it ends up on my shelf. And it's the hard part. I mean, a lot of times, you can leave these things and you go, I've got this. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then, you get all excited, but then life happens and something is over here and you've got to like decorate the Christmas tree, or you've got to go do something, or babies, and it's like, yeah, I'll get to that. And then it's hard to pull that back around. So this part of this, discussion is about pulling yourself up to the top of your totem pole, because these are super, super, super important things that you can do to take care of yourself. So let's see. Okay. Some ideas to help with the burnout part, getting organized. Getting organized, and that can help with the going and buzzing around this whole idea of, I thought I had written this down somewhere, but yeah, Meaghan, when you're talking about being busy, I think that busy can also be a coping mechanism. It can be a defense mechanism. And yeah, and so if you think about it, like, what happens to you when you sit down and you do that breathing that Cindy was talking about earlier, just that, just like let it out. What happens in your mind if you were to actually sit down and, I don't know, 30 seconds can be a long time. So even if you just sat down, like, maybe that could be an exercise to do, is to, well, this wasn't about organized, I'll get back to that, but you can't get organized until you get your head on straight. So I think the first part is just sitting down, paying attention to what happens. Do you start feeling anxious? Do you start, do you get fidgety? Do you need to pick up your phone and figure out what's going on your social media? Do you need to text somebody? What happens if you were to just sit and not do anything for 30 minutes? I think you can, or 30 seconds. I think you can learn a lot about yourself. And then you can increase it. Try 45 seconds, then try a minute. You can ask, just set the timer and see what kinds of things pop up. If you're having a really hard time sitting down and just relaxing, get a piece of paper and a pen and open your eyes, jot it down, come back to your space. Jot it down, come back to your space. Another exercise that I really like to help relax is, if you breathe through, you can do this little experiment. If you breathe through your nose, you feel one temperature. And if you exhale through your nose, you're going to feel another temperature. So try it real quick and see if it's cool or warm. What do you guys come up with? Think to yourself, cool, warm, cool, warm. And what you're doing is you're shifting, how much time do we have? A little bit. You're shifting over into your left brain, which I'm going to tell you this really quick. It's the most amazing little trick in the world if you're having some anxiety or you're just having a hard time calming down. Okay, so you've got two sides of your brain. You have your left brain and your right brain. Your left brain is all your logic. So I think of it, if you go left, it's like, no, for logic. So left is logic, and your right is all your emotion and your creativity. So what you can't use physiologically, you can't use both sides of your brain at a high level at the same exact time. You can go like zing, zing, but you can't use both sides of your brain at a high level. And so what happens is when you're super, super anxious, your right brain gets elevated and your left brain goes to sleep. And that's why there's no logic in anxiety. There's no logic in anxiety. You didn't think like, oh my gosh, what if my house got robbed yesterday? Because then you'd go, well, hopefully it didn't get robbed yesterday. But you could go, yeah, well, it didn't. And then your brain goes, yeah, but what if it did yesterday? And your body goes, well, it didn't. And it's like, okay, well, you can go back and forth, but that gets to be a really boring conversation because nothing happened yesterday. And so, but instead, if you go, oh, what if my house gets robbed tomorrow? Then all of a sudden your brain's like, oh, yummy, yummy. And it starts coming up with all kinds of like, yeah, and it could do, this could happen and this could happen. It's like your worst case scenario kicks in, but there's no logic to it because there's no fact based. So when you get anxious, your right brain elevates and your left brain goes to sleep. And so to work with anxiety, you've heard about, well, take a deep breath and just, focus on the facts and all that stuff. Well, it's impossible to do that when your left brain is sleeping. So you have to activate your left brain, which automatically calms down your right brain. And so one of my favorite things to do, well, this cool warm thing, you're activating the left brain. So not only are you breathing, which is good, but you're also activating your left brain. One of my favorites that I do it, when I have those and wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep, is the alphabet. So I have to go over A through Z and I have to come up with animals at the zoo that go with each letter of the alphabet. And I mean, it sounds so silly, but it is amazing. You just feel your whole body just because you just activated the left brain. So sometimes, the sooner you can catch this anxious feeling, the better, the easier it is to manage it. But I've had to go through the alphabet like 3 times sometimes just because it's like, oh, I missed it. It's my brain is just racing. But yeah, the first A through E is kind of easy, alligator, bear, cat, dog, whatever. But then you have to start really thinking about it. And it's like, okay, what comes next? Which animal? And you can do names, you can do foods, you can do states. I have a client who's doing things that remind her of Christmas right now. You can get as creative as you want to, but what you're doing is you're activating the left brain, and so that your body starts calming down, because your body, anxiety is a good thing. Anxiety can help you realize burnout is happening. Anxiety is like, hey, I'm here to help you. And when you're like really burnt out or overwhelmed with something, it's helpful. If you're being chased by a tiger, it's really helpful to have a little anxiety. But when you're trying to sleep and it's 2:00 in the morning, it's horrible. And so anxiety can be a good thing, but it can also, be very detrimental to your body, your adrenal glands, everything. So as far as burnouts and coming back to the remedy part, figuring out how to relax, because then you're going to figure out, what is it that I want? What do I want in my life? Getting organized, what are my priorities? What am I even trying to work on? If I were not burned out, what would that feel like? If I were not burned out, what would be going on in my life? Who would I be talking to? What job would I be doing? How would I spend my days off? How would I spend my evenings? What would I be eating? How much am I drinking? All of that stuff. If I weren't burned out, what would that look like? And I think from there you can start to prioritize, and then you can start setting some short-term realistic goals for yourself. And setting some short-term realistic goals for yourself is a quick way to increase your confidence, because they're short-term because you need some immediate gratification, and they're realistic so you're not setting yourself up to fail. So if you can figure out, first, okay, so going over this again, you're relaxing, you're getting your thoughts together, you're deciding, you're really coming up with a vision for yourself. What would it look like if I were not burned out, if I were really content in my life? And then setting some short-term realistic goals around that. How can I achieve that for myself? And then you start at square one. And if you miss it, if it's like, I thought I could do this, but I can't, it's okay. It just means that you have to chunk it down a little bit more so that you get into the short-term realistic. Otherwise, you can go, you're too much in the long-term goal. And if you go from like where you are now into long-term, there's some steps that you're missing. So it's not that you can't do it, it's just that you need to chunk it down. And then from there, we talked about boundaries earlier. Meaghan, you were talking about boundaries, just being able to say no, being able to ask for what you need. Because a lot of times you look like you've got it all together. And so no one comes up to you and says, hey, what can I do for you? So I think that we can put this like persona on that we're fine. So setting some boundaries. And I think there's different, think of all the different kinds of boundaries. When you think of it initially, you think of like mental boundaries or physical boundaries. There's emotional boundaries, there's monetary boundaries, there's political boundaries, there's spiritual boundaries, religious boundaries. I don't know, we can think of a whole bunch of them, but boundaries isn't just, hey, you're in my space. It's like, how are they in your space? And being able to assert yourself, which takes the confidence to speak up and really say what you need. Let's see. Oh, I talked about being able to cut yourself some slack. So gratitude. Gratitude is pretty powerful. I think that, it's a term that's used a lot, but I think it's used a lot for a reason. And sometimes, it's partly getting out of your head about what's everything that's wrong in my life instead of like, what's going right in my life. And you can almost, when I was talking about that energy earlier, when you start getting into things that you're grateful for, you feel an energy shift. It's like, okay, I do have some good things going in my life. And guess what happens? Your confidence starts coming back. Because you start believing in yourself that you have accomplished things. You've been in tough spots before. You've been burned out before. And you managed it. Somehow you got through it in the past, which means that you'll be able to get through it again. You just have to reorganize your brain. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of some, healthy coping skills. Yeah, of course. Coming up with really healthy coping mechanisms for yourself. Exercise, sleep, drinking water. Those are listening to music. Sometimes I've encouraged people to put a playlist together and whether it's a relaxing playlist, whether it's a motivating playlist, whether it's just a happy playlist. I think that music can be very emotion directing. So putting that together. I think the first thing that you want to do is go grab a bottle of wine, do a shot, whatever, grab some beer. Moderation I think you've got to know yourself. If you've got a problem with alcohol, obviously, that's not a good go-to. In moderation, I've always kind of thought that if something's a problem in your life, it's a problem. So as far as, I don't want to get too far into addiction and stuff, but addiction is whether it's shopping, gambling, sex, food, exercise, work, too much of anything is too much. Chocolate's yummy, but too much chocolate and your stomach's gonna hurt, So I think it's being mindful of like what your intention is. Why am I drinking this wine? Why am I eating this food? Why am I going to exercise right now? Why am I turning on my computer and looking at my email right now? Why am I doing this? And if you can say I'm doing it because I want to, then you're in, and I really want to, I need to do this, it's going to make me feel good, then you're intentional about it. If it's like, well, it's because I don't want to deal with that, then, be aware of it. I have it's called a whole life grid, and it's your life divided into 9 different areas.
Mhm.
And I have a link. It's an email thing that you can sign up for, but you can get the link. It's all free. So Meaghan, I can send that to you if you want, but it kind of walks you through like, what is this whole life grid, and what are these 9 different areas, and how would you know if you're how would you know if you're content in these 9 areas? And with this, when you're here now, or if you're listening to this, like, please don't try to get all 9 areas balanced. I don't know anyone who's got all 9 areas. That is not the goal.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, and I can send it out to the group too.
Yeah, yeah. Because it is, you don't think about, what am I shooting for? What is my long-term goal? And I think that burnout is very much the long game, not the short game. It took you this long to get to where you are. It's going to take you some time to get yourself back to where you're feeling a good sense of control over yourself. So I think being patient with yourself, but also knowing, like, what am I shooting for? Does anyone else have any other ideas or questions? Or I can get you that. I'll get you the whole life grid, and just a couple other links that I have for the Women's Empowerment Toolkit group. And just ways to contact me if you need to. And I can get you that, Meaghan.
Yes, please send that. I will follow up with that, how to connect with you. Is there any other, so the best way to connect with you, if we still want to, just keep learning, is to join your Facebook group?
Facebook group. I can send you my email address. And if you want to email, my website is healthyhealing.net. And then all my stuff is on the website. So yeah, I can get you that.
Okay. Yeah. Are you still doing one-on-one?
I am. So I live in Colorado, and my license, I can do therapy like through insurance in Colorado. But what I had to go get like a coaching certificate so that I could be a coach also, so that I could go outside of Colorado lines, but I can't go through insurance if I go outside of Colorado, just because my license doesn't work like that. But since I got this like 20-hour coaching license, I guess I can coach. So I have a book. This is the workbook that goes with it, but it's called Preparing for the Jungle, Avoiding Snakes and Pitfalls on the Path to Healthy Love. And so, yeah, it's a whole workbook. The book is coming out. It's on pre-sales right now on Amazon. My publisher is still putting it together. And everything in the book, I haven't seen it yet. They're like putting the workbook kind of embedded into the book. The course is online and it's live right now, and that's through Teachable. But it basically, it's how to, I just work with so many people who get into one bad relationship after another, and then they don't know why they're continuing to attract and be attracted to the wrong kind of person. So I, start way back to how you grew up, your family roles, going into attachment styles and personality types, going into how to effectively communicate and manage conflict, self-confidence, forgiveness, evaluating all your past relationships, looking at how fear drives so much of our emotion, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. And then I get into developing your non-negotiables, what the foundation of a relationship is, the difference between healthy and toxic relationships, and then go out and I think it's for people who are out there in the dating world, but it's also for people who are in relationships who could improve their relationship, just as far as communication and how you can save your marriage as well. So yeah.
And
it was nice to meet you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.